But in November of 2017, it was getting close to Thanksgiving, and I was preparing for a big family to come to Jackson from Huntsville, and I was doing all the cooking, and I wanted just a bigger table, so I sold my small table on Facebook, and the guy came to pick it up, and his brother didn't show up, so he asked me to help him move it. It was not heavy. I've moved things my whole life. I used to teach fitness for 20 years back in the day. It was not a big deal to me, so I picked up the table and helped him load it on the truck, but I was walking backwards because he didn't want to walk backwards. So I was walking backwards, and what I didn't realize is there was this big strip out in the driveway where the cement had washed away. And because it was a warm November day, I was wearing flip-flops. Well, while I was walking backwards and carrying this table, my flip-flop got hung on that, like a pothole situation. And when it got hung, I tried to keep my balance for about 2 seconds, and it wasn't going to happen because my flip-flop got buried. It was just buried in that pothole, and I went flat backwards on concrete with the impact being so big because I had that table, and I in a split second, my mind went to, I don't want to break the table, I just sold it. So, and I also don't want to crack my head open, so I'm going to fall in a sit-up position. And that all happened, like in 1 second, all this goes through your head. So I fell in this position where I was sitting up, and right here on the back part of the low spine and top of the tailbone area. I wouldn't know for another week what I did until I went to step on a Stairmaster, and as soon as I took those steps, I started screaming, crying. I hit a nerve, and I realized I had done something from that fall, and it got worse from there. 2 days later, I was in the emergency room, and then 2 days later again, I'm in an emergency room. A week later, I'm in an emergency room. I realized I don't know what's going on, but I thought I had kidney infection. I know what it is. I have kidney stones. No, I know what it is. I don't know what it is, but neither do all the doctors. And over the course of 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, the pain was getting worse. I learned through MRIs, which, by the way, we had to pay for everything because our insurance wouldn't cover anything, so we were going broke. We were going totally broke over the course of this injury. My husband became so desperate to see me get some type of relief that he started asking God to take his life because of the life insurance. $250,000 would get me fixed. I could get the best doctor. The places that your mind goes when you're fatigued and you're exhausted, and you've been raised up with the Word, you know the Word, but at this point you're numb. You can go numb, and I didn't feel bad for going numb. I really felt like God understood that, but I was getting frustrated. At the same time with pain, when it goes on and on and on, it's really easy to go into a depressed mode and do nothing. And that's one thing that the Holy Spirit would not let me do. He would not let me go there because if I froze my worship, that's when I would die. And I knew many times, although for several months I couldn't sit at the piano because I would touch that nerve. I couldn't stand, I couldn't sit. And I was playing for the Church Triumphant Global and putting in about 18 hours a week at the time, and it was just the more I sung, the more I ripped that nerve in half, and that's what I had done. I had shattered nerves, just ripped and shredded, and it's like if you've ever had a nerve in your tooth and you needed a cavity filled, and you don't touch it, nobody touches it or you'll scream. It was that kind of pain, except it was in my back. And then I was told for a year that nothing can be done. So I went for injections in Tuscaloosa, $1,500 per shot. I mean, I had 3 of those. Pretty soon we went through everything we had. I just remember we lived by the reservoir, and I just remember just driving toward it. And the thought, oh God, if you could just give me the courage to drive right in this reservoir, just let me have rest. I'm so tired, I just want some rest. And he would just, in that split second, I would turn on my worship and he would speak to my heart again, just encourage me to hold on. But I couldn't do music like I used to do music because I couldn't sing. It would rip my nerve whenever I would take a breath. I couldn't sing, I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand. And it was very frustrating to me because of what God had called me to do. So after I went through a year and a half of seeing every doctor I could find that said they were specialists, and nobody could find nothing how to fix me. And I felt like everybody had given up on me. A year and a half later, when I was just on my last end, we had spent all that we had, and I thought I was close to a nervous breakdown, starting to ask God just to take my life. I had this couple right here from Strong Tower that mentioned about helping out where we just met for the worship for a praise and worship, not praise and worship, it was like a pastor's conference. And I didn't see how I could do it at all, but I told them yes, and they didn't know about my accident. And then just a few days later, Lydia called me and she said, can you do the music for this women's conference? And I said, yes, but I was hesitant because I knew the pain I was going to have to suffer. And I said, okay, but I've got to go to Tuscaloosa. So that was March 30th, a year and a half after my accident, and I was on the giving up road. And I went to do that, cover the music for the conference where I met Sandra. And I remember that right in the middle of our worship, the Holy Spirit told me to change the song to I Surrender All, and we just did. We immediately went, but I was singing it to myself. And the atmosphere was being created for an expectancy, but it was coming through Sister Sandra here because what she was saying, as soon as she got up talking, it was powerful. And so the engagement I had to be in Tuscaloosa at 12 o'clock, I ended up canceling because the Holy Spirit told me to stay. And I said, could this be the day? The atmosphere and the expectancy began, and it was literally like a drum roll in my spirit going on. At the end, at the end, when she got done teaching, the Holy Spirit was moving, and several people came up to be prayed for. Then I heard a testimony about someone she had prayed for 8 years ago that was healed of breast cancer. 8 years later, she was still going strong. And I'm like, whoa, well, that built my faith a little bit. And I said, could it be I'm supposed to be here, although it was a last-minute thing? And then she prayed and prayed, and it was all over. And Sister Sandra said, Rhnea, lead us out in a victory song. I said, all right. But the Holy Spirit said, now, have her pray for you. And I'm like, oh, everybody's prayed for me. Okay, but the two prayers that went before her I know were seeds. It's about obedience sometimes, people. It's about obedience sometimes. You got to move when he says move. Because if you listen to yourself, Satan will keep you sick, depressed, and hopeless. So the Holy Spirit told me one more time, and that was the words. And so I went and asked, I said, can you pray for me before we go out? Because it was over. Church, it was over. And I told Lydia, I'm going up there. And she said, come on. So I walked up there, and I told the story in the short form, my accident, my shredded nerves, and the pain is worse than childbirth. And she just began to pray for me, and it was nothing like you would think. It was just, she had this expectancy. I dare you, devil, to mess with this worship leader, this woman of God. What she's spoken to my heart, it was the look in her eyes that was familiar to me. That was power. That was faith. That was hope. I'm supposed to be here. This is why I didn't go to Tuscaloosa that day. And she began to pray for me, and she put her hands on my back, but she started at the top of my neck, and she crawled down with both hands. She was crawling down and hitting certain nerves. But when she got to the lower part, my legs became just numb, and I fell forward. The power of God, which I never do that. The power of God just knocked me forward, and I'm laying on my face, and I could hear the people just backing her up, praying for me. But something started snapping inside of me. And first it snapped in my head, like God can. He can do this. I mean, I'm about to take my life. But God can do this. And the chain started breaking in my head first, believing. And now I know it. And then it went from breaking in my head to my heart. Now I'm receiving it. That was what I was hearing in my head, just the crackling and the breaking. And I was in the floor for several minutes. When I got up, I thanked her for praying for me, and then I didn't realize until a week later when I went into a rehearsal that lasted until midnight, right before the Strong Tower conference, I was not hurting. I would have never been there until midnight. I wouldn't have even showed up at the rehearsal. I mean, my whole life was changed. My husband said my attitude changed. Everything about our life changed. The joy came back. The peace came back. He did not get me. And I have stayed busy ever since doing things I never could have done with this accident. I have stayed busy in music. I have been writing songs again. He's given me, and sometimes people wonder why do you praise the way you praise? Because you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what he's done for me, so therefore you can't judge me.